at Buffalo State College, a doctorate in economics from the University of Massachusetts, an internationally known scholar with numerous presentations on cooperative economics, community economic development, black political economy, urban economic development, and industrial organization. He is a published author, several books and journals. Many topics range from the review of black political economy to something that he recently began to do and says is one of his newest projects, community economic development and ethnic entrepreneurship to economic democracy, the cooperative alternative. Dr. Haynes is also co-founder of Resurgent City Center for Cooperative Community Development, a HUD-funded community outreach partnership dedicated to community revitalization through cooperative economics. There's that word again. The interchange of ideas and efforts, and participatory and applied research. He partnered the relationship between the RCC and Our Market project. He's catalyst of the current Top Supermarket on Jefferson Avenue, and is the president and founder of the Conscious Investment Group. That's a company dedicated to economic and financial education, employment generation, and targeted use of venture capital. Venture capital is extremely important, as most of us know, when it comes to looking for funds to start and maintain a business. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people in Buffalo know the man that I'm about to introduce to you as a man who ran as Ellicott District Council member on the City of Buffalo's Common Council in 2010. But as you just heard, there is much, much more to Dr. Curtis Haynes Jr. Please welcome to the microphone our keynote speaker for this evening, Dr. Curtis Haynes Jr.
Thank you for that great introduction. I want to tell a little story, right? I want to tell a story about how I got to being up in the podium right here. How I got to thinking about the way I think. I'm a student of what I would call spiritual economics. And I'm here today to tell you why I think you should be also. I've been training for years, polishing my spirit, such that today I am a modestly wealthy man. Not by the traditional means based on what I have, although what I have is not bad. I have a good job, I have an income property, I have a small business and a little bit of money in the bank. Not bad by today's standards. But that is not what I'm talking about. I also have health, not to the degree that I want. I could lose a few pounds. I have wealth in material things, but I can get it better under control. And I have love from my family, from my wife in the back corner over there, from my son, my friends, my students. And with all these, there is not much more to be added to the cup of happiness. And speaking of happiness, I have the understanding that I cannot sign a promissory note for happiness into the future. Because if I am upset or unhappy or downright depressed now, I cannot say I will wait until tomorrow to be happy. Tomorrow may never come, and the cost in terms of hours, days, weeks, months, and years is the same in terms of life. No, I cannot say that I got down what I have to do today, and I will not wait to be happy tomorrow. No, spiritually is linking happiness to what's happening now. And I want you to see this and recognize these are not only good life principles, they are also good business principles, and by extension, good economic principles, hence spiritual economics. But what I'm here to tell you is that health, wealth, and love in the external world, the world of the visible, are the effects of causes that are in the internal world. And this is a major point. If I want to be healthier, I have to will myself to work out. If I want to be better control of my material wealth, I have to have the discipline to take the ideas in my head and turn them into reality. And if I want to have more love in my life, I have to give more love. This is not just feel-good stuff. This is science. It took me a lifetime from Northampton, England, to the halls of academia to arrive at this understanding of right life principles linked to business and economic decisions. All you have to do is hear how I got to stand in front of you today to understand this exciting new direction in economics and business. I was born in Northampton, England. Some of you might call me a military brat. I was an international and national traveler thanks to my Air Force NCO dad, who was transferred throughout Europe and the U.S. My dad is a small-town country boy from Bessemer, Alabama, right outside of Birmingham. My mother is a city girl from the suburban areas of London. That may be mixed, but my cultural consciousness was black, and that's how most saw me as a black American. Being a military dependent meant we kids were equally dependents, with one exception. Our economic awareness was that we were all NCO kids instead of officer kids. That all changed when I became a student at the University of Massachusetts. It's hard to stay oblivious when you're in college. I recall a conversation I had when I first arrived on campus straight from Europe. A group of young student activists were discussing socialism and the economic policies associated with that system. I vaguely remember the words that made me think of my own lifestyle as a military dependent. I thought about the subsidized housing, the food, the health care, the youth services, and a host of other activities that generated a sense of ease and security as I grew up. I injected into the conversation, "Hey, that's how I live, socialism." And the activists quickly retorted, "That's not socialism, that's militarism." One comment, and I was onto a whole new way of thinking. UMass was located in a small college town known as the Happy Valley. I lived on campus, and I was shocked personally and culturally by the racially and income-segregated neighborhoods and communities in the surrounding area. In the hood, the vibration was vibrant, but in the Happy Valley, it was serene, calm, and peaceful. It was no wonder that I became heavily influenced by the black nationalist influences of the 1960s. I felt economics had chosen me, but studying economics formally was difficult. There I was, a young black man surrounded by white professors, reading texts by white authors, talking about white economics, and in a white society. And all of this in the Happy Valley. I was alienated and I was angry. And then I read Karl Marx's Theory of Surplus Value. Now, what inspired me in Marx wasn't the dogma, but rather finally understanding that to destroy the dominant paradigms in economics and the cultural and political assumptions surrounding them, I had to understand them. That made economics go down a whole lot easier. I studied economics for over 30 years, and most of that time I've been looking at issues of poverty and how to understand poverty from the perspective of an economist, particularly a political economist with a special emphasis on the study of the black condition in the United States. Once I understood theory, I worked on policy issues. I settled in on cooperative economics as an appropriate blend of pragmatism, idealism, capable of responding to the economic and social needs of the urban ghettoized communities that I was becoming familiar with. Key was a premise that Mondragon Cooperative Corporation, founded in the Basque Lands of Spain, was a model worth looking at. And I'll speak more about Mondragon later. Cooperative economic policy is associated with black political economy, the way that laissez-faire market policy is associated with neoclassical economic theory, and the way that deficit spending and inactive government intervention is associated with Keynesian economic theory. And class analysis is associated with Marxian economic theory. Black political economy and cooperative economic policy goes hand in hand. Black political economy became my discipline. It's the study of black Americans, a population whose members consider themselves or are considered by others as black. This black population of an estimated 35 million expresses a uniqueness of historical circumstances and experiences as a component of a broader U.S. population of an estimated 300 million, and a global population of an estimated 7 billion. And you know the statistics. Now, my mentor, Lloyd Hogan, says that his definition of political economy is that political economy is the study of a human population undergoing the act of social reproduction over a protracted period of time under a set of rules promulgated and enforced by a political state within a bounded geographical domain. That's economic talk. But the point here, this theoretical construct states that black folks are no different than any other people, except that the material, social, and psychological poverty so pervasive in many black communities was in part a function of generating wealth for others. Through a long history of slavery, feudal sharecropping, and wage labor. Looking at the conditions of Africans and the African diaspora is looking at the conditions of a people who have experienced an unprecedented Holocaust. But there is a better future. To quote my mentor, Lloyd Hogan, black Americans stand at the threshold of a worldwide social revolution. Their unique history of suffering and struggle for survival places them in an unparalleled position to be exemplars to the rest of the exploited people of how a new social order can be conscientiously fashioned to reflect the perfectibility of the human condition on earth. Poverty to perfectibility. I say amen to that.
Amen.
I came to Buffalo in 1993. The city offered me an opportunity to put what I had learned from UMass, Hogan, and my personal experiences into action. The Our Market community-owned supermarket project of the mid-1970s was an example of such community and scholarly collaboration. The best example of cooperative economics that could generate economies of scale and possibly be applicable in black urban communities was a Mondragon Cooperative Corporation, founded in the Basque Lands of Spain. What we tried to do with the Our Market project was bring the ideas of this cooperative corporation that was worker-owned, 80,000 workers owning, through one person, one vote, a company that has over $2 billion in revenues. And we said the conditions in Spain for the Basque is very similar to the conditions of African Americans here in the United States. However, after some struggle, the group I worked with came to see that conceptually, a collaboration among a nexus of cooperative and cooperative institutions could generate sustainable growth and increase living standards, both desperately needed in the urban communities. What we saw was that the model that they built in the Basque Lands of Spain was not easily transferable to here in Buffalo, New York. However, cooperative economics is. The concept of democracy is critical to cooperative policy. The idea is that representative democracy practiced in the political realm could be practiced in the economic realm. W.E.B. Du Bois, in his autobiography, Dusk of Dawn, talked about the cooperative commonwealth and presented it as decentralized control through one person, one vote, and centralized management of businesses and firms. But concept and theory just aren't the same as actually doing. In application, we faced a whole host of hurdles. First was an unconscious and unquestioned activism that focused on income differentials in the communities, in the workplace, among gender and race and so on. And second was a lack of understanding of finance. And here's a big hurdle. Although community members in general accepted cooperative economics in concept, the realities of the daily grind, coupled with no clear-cut example of Mondragon principles applied successfully in the United States black communities, led to a lackluster manifestation of cooperative practice rooted in cooperative economic policy and black political economic theory. In short, it wasn't working. It was through practice that I came to understand that cooperatives and cooperative practices were tools. And that was what my misconception was. They're tools rather than goals. In fact, I became a little disillusioned by the cooperative process as it became clear that even when practicing consensus seeking, reinforced with one person, one vote, When consensus was not found, arriving at agreed upon decisions was a lot more complicated in practice than in theory. This complexity of goals and concepts and financial ignorance and burnout was confounded even more after receiving a well-meaning collective scholar activist of a $500,000 HUD grant to establish the Resurgent City Center of Buffalo State College. $500,000 built off the statistics of the east side of Buffalo, ended up in Buffalo State College, and then just disappeared. Proving again that money alone isn't the solution. Working through research became self-evident that it was next to impossible to convert the small group activities of concerned black citizens into institutional power that could demonstrate economies of scale and influence and generate significant capital, straight up, make money. I own the failure of our market, along with others who went into the venture with more idealism than practical hands-on experience. Practice was a lot thornier than theory. And this brings us to today. Professionally, I've studied the black condition and found meaning in a political economic paradigm that shifts emphasis from what we produce to who we become. I believe in and practice policies of economic cooperation, and I apply my research to my own life as I participate in community building economics. I buy and maintain real estate in the downtown areas of Buffalo. I build a small investment company, and I work daily on developing a deeper understanding of myself and a clearer understanding of success, defined as attainment without regard to things attained. Again, success, attainment without regards to things attained. Where Lloyd Hogan's work ended as a social revolution to establish new economics sets of realities, mine begins a spiritual economic journey. Now, around the turn of the century, or turn of the millennium, I was shifting through personal emphasis towards the study of wealth. So were other activists and scholars. At the Wealth Accumulation Conference on How Ethnicity and Race Matters, held at the University of Maryland in 2000, there was a shift from a focus on wage, income, and jobs to a new consideration of wealth and assets. But even so, the conference still lacked because of emphasis on wealth differentials as compared to wealth expansion. And more importantly, most people outside of economics, how to generate wealth in households, how to generate wealth in neighborhoods, and how to generate wealth in communities. Check it out. We've all heard that personal is political, and by my experience, it's true. It was in my own New York State retirement account that I realized the difference between a defined contribution plan and a defined benefit plan. I had a defined contribution plan where the state contributed a portion to my retirement and I contributed a portion. My contribution was mandatory. Matter of fact, if it wasn't mandatory, I wouldn't have saved anything. This retirement plan was different than a pension. And in the late 1990s, my retirement account grew in leaps and bounds, and I sure was feeling good. But by 2000, the dot-com market busted. The stock market collapsed, and my retirement account shrunk. Ooh-wee. A few of my colleagues were temporarily millionaires, planning to retire. In 2000, they had to rethink this, as their 7-figure retirement fund dropped back down to 6 figures. Despite being an economist, I had no training in finance. And I did not understand what was going on. I didn't understand what was happening. That's right. You can know economics cold and not know a darn thing about finance. When my retirement account began to disappear, I began to study finance. My transition from income advocate to prosperity advocate was also influenced by my relationship with my students. One of my young students back here, Lerone Abrams, right? Particularly black males studying economics. It became painfully clear that the correlation between a bachelor's degree in economics and career opportunities, especially for black male graduates, was tenuous at best. I found myself advising them to take an entrepreneurial route, something that many of them were already in tune with. But the truth is that the labor market is a battlefield for access to income from labor. Accessing career employment through the traditional labor markets channel, was rife with barriers to entry for a typical urban black male youth. The problem was, I was advising entrepreneurship while I had the security of being a salaried employee with tenure. I started making entrepreneurial moves. I participated in a startup investment group that ended up turning into a savings group because we could not agree upon what conscious investing actually was. Inspired, we continued, and I brought together another group of students and founded a new conscious investment group. And this group bought and sold stock, catered food, and they inspired me again. And this time, with my wife, we bought investment property in the residential downtown Buffalo neighborhoods. Many students of this era involved with our group became entrepreneurs in their own right, buying income property and starting small businesses. As I studied and collected entrepreneurial experiences, I made a transition in my relationship with some of my close students who would become my friends. I moved from being a teacher and professor of economics toward collecting experiences and knowledge in the realms of entrepreneurship, small business, and all things spiritual. I wanted to share with others as mentor, not necessarily just as a salaried professor with a state job. This was a conscious decision, as I could now say, I too am taking an entrepreneurial path, and this is what I've experienced, and this is what I've read about. With my new and burgeoning education and finance, I stopped focusing on poverty and looked to wealth creation as a critical component of responding to urban poverty. You don't get healthy by studying disease, and you don't get rich by studying poverty. I began to feel on a gut level what I already knew as an economist. Wealth is a social concept that takes a form relevant to the society creating it. And as I rehabbed my own properties, it was a lot clearer to me that labor is the first stage of capital creation. Now, many economists, through their profit maximization and cost minimization models, trivialize the depths of emotional development necessary to be a good and conscientious business owner. Such misguided understanding had many business owners thinking that concern for the community was just social work, and that business had to be about making money, and that the black consumer had to be taught to buy black. Now, the weakness of this line of thinking is reflected in buy local and buy American. Buying American or buying black is a political decision, while most of us as consumers look for the best deal at the best price. Some of us can be motivated politically, but think Walmart and think made in China. It is hard for black business to compete with such powerhouses. American cars did not start selling until they were able to compete with the quality of the foreign car companies. China did not become an economic powerhouse by telling its people to buy Chinese. They built an export-based economy and brought the wealth home and power back to China. And once the Chinese had the money, they bought Chinese. It was part of this journey of spiritual economics that led me to serve as Ellicott District Council member. I have no regrets, and I'm grateful for what I learned. And even though we live in one of the world's greatest political representative democracies, many in the U.S. face a dilemma which signifies that political representation does not ensure economic security. Too many Americans face poverty, unemployment, and social stress, even in times of relatively prosperity. Political representation, whether Democratic or Republican, does not get at the cause of economic poverty. It can only relieve some of the symptoms. Think about our brother, Barack Obama. What a great achievement, President of the United States of America. And I do appreciate the health care bill being passed. But even though that health bill was passed, and even though we upheld that student loans interest rates will not go up, here on the streets of Buffalo, one of the poorest cities in the nation, democratic leadership in the hands of a black man has not filtered down into significant grassroots socioeconomic uplift. My tenuous council member confirmed this view. In office, I was able to respond to the symptoms, but not to the causes. Today in the 21st century, Americans, irrespective of racial, ethnic categories, use a plethora of strategies and tactics to secure the proverbial daily bread. The method is characteristic of modern capitalist economy, and the path chosen by most has been that of wage labor. Talk about a race to the bottom. If you think about globalization, when somebody in China is willing to work for 6 cents an hour and do the work we can do, man, we got a lot to deal with. Unskilled industrial wage labor with a limited high school scholastic education, watch out. At this point in my life, I've chosen a route of an entrepreneur who is equally an academic and activist economist pursuing human perfectibility. In other words, I've opted for a philosophy of success that I call spiritual economics. This is not an academic treatise. Its merit is in the truth founded in experience. It's grounded in the belief and the pursuit of human perfectibility. Spiritual economics focuses on personal productivity in finance and economics and wealth creation. It is built on the premise that either consciously or subconsciously we hold the keys to our own destiny. This is the master key, and there's no cost to wield it. Spiritual economics recognizes there is an infinitely vast inner world to be harnessed through the powers of mental science and mental technology. Now, my first formal awareness of mental science and mental technology was through the martial arts, Taoist and Eastern thought. But most recently, I recognized it in the success and prosperity literature that can be found in any bookstore at any airport. Mental science and technology are built on the premise that either consciously or subconsciously we hold the keys to our own destiny by the way we think. Mental science studies human psychology with the intention of applying what is learned through mental technology. It says that there's an infinitely vast inner world, and that the laws governing this world are as fixed and infallible as in the material world. Mental technology harnesses these laws in a positive and affirming way. Now, these aren't totally new ideas. Think of LeBron James. You know LeBron James, right? He willed the Miami Heat to a championship. You know that. You saw that. His determination and work ethics influenced his team members. He did not blame others for the situation he found himself in when he made that move from Cleveland to Miami. Courage as well as cowardice is contagious. LeBron James showed courage, doubling his playoff statistics in all major areas, culminating in a well-executed team ball in that final game where they blew out Oklahoma. I was rooting for Oklahoma. I like the brand of basketball, but again, LeBron just willed that victory. But the point, James, Durant, or any of the others apply their will to themselves. Listen to this. They apply their wills to themselves in reaching the heights of basketball success. All it is attainment in a chosen field. Basketball is a chosen field. It's just an attainment in a particular field. The lesson is attainment, skills, success skills can be applied in the field of economics and finance if one is willing to put in the time. It is guaranteed that if you get your head right, you can make it right. These are critical times, and that makes it a perfect time to focus on the psychology of human betterment as an exact science. We are entering a new age. Human beings have been moved from one society to another, from communal, slave, feudal, capitalist, and even socialist or communist. Through the process of globalization, we are currently in a transitionary capitalist stage. We've transitioned from hunter-gatherer, agricultural, industrial information age, and right now we are transitioning from the industrial age to the knowledge and the information age. Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Wikipedia, iPads, smartphones. This is a long way from Bethlehem Steel. Get with the program. usher in the new age rather than clinging to the past. History shows us that such transitions bring about revolution and bounty that makes the extraordinary of the past the ordinary of the present. And the extraordinary of the present will be the ordinary of the future. Think about the leap from radio to TV or books to Kindle, and you can see what I mean. But how did these great revolutions happen? Some stepped forward and unabashedly expressed their individualism as leaders. They have the talisman of Napoleon, supreme self-confidence. Understanding and applying mental science and technology will bring a bounty that will do justice to the visions of the saints, the seers, and the prophets, and the entrepreneurs. One of the reasons that businessmen pray on Sunday and do what they have to do to survive on Monday is because they have not been taught that religious principles and the psychological principles of good business can be seamless. You do not have to relegate soul saving to Sunday morning. Good religious principles are good psychological principles, and the application of good psychological principles is good business, serving people, saving souls, and making money. Having that great idea is the beginning, and having faith to see it through to manifestation is the ending. In the aftermath of the First Great Depression, Du Bois claimed that if blacks were to have economic security, then the group as a whole must be active participants in its own industrial development. And if they didn't, he said, and waited to get their share of industry, racism would inhibit their contributions while keeping them in an unstable situation. Now, this call for black participation in economic development continued until Du Bois' death in '63. He wasn't advocating a narrow black nationalism, of which he is accused, but instead championing democracy and economic security as a solution to segregation in society. The sad fact is that black Americans did not take heed. We instead accepted the dominant paradigms of individualism, materialism, and conspicuous consumption, and we find our lives in turmoil. There has been a 50-year depression in the city of Buffalo, following an especially traumatic last gasp of the industrial age. But the local economy has troughed, it's reached its bottom, and is in the beginning stages of a new upswing. Many, if not most, do not see this, focused on their own worlds with industrial age eyes. And the last decades of the industrial age were especially traumatic to the Buffalonian, who watched one of the greatest steel belt cities turn into a rust belt on life support. But that was the industrial age. That was the past. 50 years from now, Buffalo is going to be a mecca. Mark my words. Are you going to be part of it? Or are you going to be watching the rebirth of a city on the banks of one of the world's major fresh water sources rebound, and you're going to watch it from TV in the comfort of your own living room? We have got a long way to go. But you have to realize that we've also come a long way. Seeing the violence in our community, I recognize that anger is a higher psychological state of mind than the beat-down nature that emanated from slavery on through sharecropping. The anger of the 60s was an appropriate response as we decimated the last vestiges of the sharecropping system, relegating it to the garbage heap of history. But now, the anger is self-destructive and not appropriate for 21st century community building. It is our duty as concerned citizens and community members to find an appropriate expression of that pent-up energy currently being wasted in anger. I recently picked up Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Anybody familiar with that? Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. Hill also was a Great Depression survivor. And he wrote about it. Now, I had seen this book around for years and I skimmed through it a couple of times, but it never caught my attention. I thought of it as one of those shallow, good books that were kind of warm and fuzzy. But honestly, thinking about being rich felt counter-ethical to my pursuit in black and third world liberation. It was too capitalistic in my mind. I still saw the capitalist as a cold, calculating money grabber, intent on maximizing profit and minimizing costs, constantly in conflict with labor, flaunting a propensity of lack of ethics, and certainly polluting the environment. I was not interested in becoming rich. I was more interested in serving the people from my skill set and my perspective. Relating the hard science of economics to bettering the black condition, I wanted something that was more practical, the how-to, if you will. And thinking about getting rich just did not do it for me. I was looking for something with substance. I had no idea how substantial thinking about getting rich could actually be. I recently went to a motivational seminar sponsored by Eric Eves. The keynote speaker's name was Jeremy Clark, and he presented a format that really caught my attention. He laid out what he called the success triangle. The left side represented external communication. The right side represented technical know-how, and along the bottom, internal communication. Now, I didn't quite get his numbers, but in a non-scientific way that feels right to me, I would suggest it was like 10%, 5%, and 85%. That is, 10% of success is being able to communicate externally with others. But 5% is technical know-how. And the overwhelming majority, 85%, is that internal communication. That internal communication is how you organize your thought process to build in the vast internal world of the human mind. In other words, mental science and technology. Mastering mental technology takes training and it takes discipline. If men and women are trained to be employees and not exposed to the disciplines that can help them become masters of their own destiny, when the money dries up, whether for the individual or on a mass scale, the individual and or the population will be held in the thralls and the whims of others. One writer pointed out that when the state-administered work projects were over, the workers were still poor. In Buffalo, we all know about that. I personally ran into this problem as I focused on the technical know-how while I was working on the Our Market project. I thought that if we could just deliver the technical know-how regarding the building of cooperatives on the modular model, we would be well on our way. I was wrong. Helping in the training of the internal communication is the lion's share of being successful. Internal communication is the lion's share of being successful. The idea of think and grow rich is central to success, particularly in the field of business and wealth creation. The difference between ambition and success is found in the mind. The difference between happiness and sadness is found in the mind. The difference between believing you can be rich and becoming rich is found in the mind. Thinking may not guarantee that you will become rich, but you surely can achieve it until you think about it. When Napoleon Hill wrote about the psychological depression resulting from the Great Depression, he could have been writing about Buffalo today. Lonely people everywhere. And traditional economics cannot respond to the loneliness and the anger and the fear endemic in the communities of the urban poor and the black ghettoized communities in particular. And as I said earlier, there are only three things which can possibly be desired in the world without. And each of them can be found with the world within. Health, wealth, and love. Now he said that you can debate the order, but it is irrefutable that if you possess all three, nothing else can be added to your cup of happiness. Now Napoleon Hill reflects in similar views. Riches cannot always be measured in money. Money and material things are essential for freedom of body and mind, but there are some who will feel that the greatest of all riches can be evaluated only in terms of lasting friendships, harmonious family relationships, sympathy and understanding between business associates, and introspective harmony, which brings peace of mind, measurable in only spiritual values. So what is spiritual economics? And why should you embrace it? And what does it mean for the black community? Spiritual economics is the application of purpose, faith, and gratitude to securing our daily bread. Spiritual economics is the application of purpose, faith, and gratitude to securing our daily bread. Spiritual economics is counter to the dismal science of traditional economics. It is rooted in the pursuit of human perfectibility. It is a form of applied economics that shifts emphasis from markets and production and distribution of goods and services to emphasis to who we become in that process. Human beings are both the object of study, object and subject of the study. And the goal is to desire that we all can reach the heights of our potential. Spiritual economics recognizes that all achievement, all earned riches have their beginning in an idea. And it takes effective mental technology to convert ideas into reality. Mental technology is rooted in the assumption that there's a law of harmonious attraction, that it is released when we use our willpower to control ourselves rather than impose it upon others. Mental technology is the fixed habit of constructive and harmonious thinking, locking the doors and windows of thoughts to the thieves and vagabonds of disheartening and negative ideas. And here in the city of Buffalo wants to remold itself into a 21st century urban center and needs an increasingly educated citizenship to make this happen. Currently, there's a strong disconnect between the dreams of being a 21st century global competitor and quality entrepreneurial and employment opportunities for the many of the city's 260,000 urban citizenry. This is particularly true for those educated at all levels of the Buffalo public school system. And the quandary reflecting national conditions is especially evident among black and brown males, and residually their families and their communities. 100 years ago, Buffalo ranked as one of the wealthiest cities in the nation. Today, it is ranked as one of the poorest. All local stakeholders want to put an end to this dubious distinction of decline and prosperity. Now, while many local stakeholders, public, private, and community, want to see Buffalo return to prosperity, many of the city's power brokers do not know how to use Buffalo's ethnic and racial diversity to the economic advantage. And this is a serious liability because Buffalo's minority and black population could be a key contributor to economic practices leading to a way of prosperity in the Queen City, and in a way that reflects rather than neglects the strength of race and class diversity. Despite common misperceptions, Buffalo is easily on the cusp of a new greatness. It's coming back, and whether we are a part of it or whether we're not, it's up to us. Again, to quote my mentor, Lloyd Hogan, Black Americans stand at the threshold of a worldwide social revolution. Their unique history of suffering and struggle for survival places them in an unparalleled position to be exemplars to the rest of exploited people of how a new social order can be conscientiously fashioned to reflect the perfectibility of human conditions on earth. It is time for us to step up and take our place as leaders, as exemplars, and spiritual economics will help us on this road. Recognizing the principles of cause and effect, recognizing that thoughts take up space, and a negative thought and a positive thought cannot exist in the same mental space. Think about that. A negative thought and a positive thought cannot exist in the same mental space. And we can control our thoughts, bringing our minds to the constructive and to the harmonious. Recognizing that the external is a function of the internal. And if we change our minds, we can change our realities. Recognizing that there's a price to pay, but that God rewards right action. And the value of positive thinking, speaking, and acting, even the world of business, will in the end be greater than the cost. Recognizing that if we don't let go of the anger and the hurt of the past, we cannot lead into the future. Thoughts of anger and hurt need to be replaced with inspiration and opportunity. And clearly, this cannot be done in a day, possibly not even in a lifetime. And clearly, man will never be perfect, but following the path of human perfectibility is not about the ends. It's about the journey. It's a noble journey. In my role, I train economists. I train leaders. I train mentors, and I'm offering my services to you. Visionaries who understand our past, our present, and our future can play a key role in formulating and implementing economic practices that reflect the city's mission to increase its stature as a 21st century global city. Visionaries who recognize that if we get our mind right, we can get our reality right. Visionaries who recognize that Black Americans can lead us to the promised land, to the land of milk and honey. So thank you for listening. If you're interested in what I do, and if you want more information on the Conscious Investment Group and what we plan to do with the Academy, there are some trifold brochures in the back of the room. Thank you for the opportunity to share my ideas with you. Now, there's one last quote I'd like to share with you, one that helps me on my spiritual journey. I am shall be not only another day's journey nearer home, but I shall have lived a man's part and done a man's work in the world, and be worthy to sit at the feet of my Father. Amen.